So Todd, it's been 2 weeks since we've had our last filter. I was out of the country. Did I miss anything?
You know what? I was out of the country too, so I don't think there's really any. I'm not sure that anything happened here
No, nothing.
last 2 or 3 weeks.
Nothing at all. It's just been a boring, slow. So,
Yeah,
well,
no. What's been up with you? You were on a long vacation, and you know, if you didn't sustain any damage in your home, I'm going to take full credit for it because I was praying left and right for you. Matt left on vacation. What 4 or 5 days before the hurricane hit? You live in the middle of Long Island, and you were in the middle of an ocean for
yeah,
12 days. Tell us
yeah.
about that. What
That
happened?
was it was awesome actually. We actually a couple hours after our last podcast, Teresa and I got on a plane to Barcelona and took a slow boat back to Miami. It was phenomenal. We
Really?
were out in the
That's
middle of nowhere. Didn't have to listen to any political commercials. Um, and then this little thing called Sandy. We heard about it, but yeah, we're in the middle of the ocean, so there's nothing we can do about it. So,
So did you? Now, my inclination would have been to worry my butt off. Did you worry about it, or did you have actually? Were you able to have a good time?
um, you know, I just we're in the middle of the ocean, and there's absolutely nothing that we could have done. And so we watched a little bit of on the cruise ship they have Fox News, MSNBC, and then a couple of British services, BBC and
Hmm.
Sky News. And we watched a little bit of MSNBC, who told us that Mitt Romney caused Sandy, and we watched a little bit of Fox News, which told us that Obama caused Sandy. And then we decided that we're just going to watch the BBC, and we got far better coverage.
So who
Um,
did the BBC blame it on?
you know what? they just didn't know what to make of the whole thing.
Uh,
So and with their accents, you couldn't understand. Um, so yeah, we didn't necessarily worry. I mean, there's nothing you can do, right?
yeah, that's true. But what'd you find when you got home?
Power was on. We
Really?
got
Well, that's good.
Yeah, we got a couple text messages while we're out. All the family was safe and all that kind of stuff. We had power's on. We've got a shed in our backyard that sustained a little bit of gutter damage, but all in all, we're fine. Our neighbors they went until actually a few minutes ago without power,
Really.
um, but we were actually in really good shape. So we're in the
So
middle.
and you're in the middle, right? The very middle.
Yeah, we're in the middle and on a high spot. So
Yeah.
if
Yeah.
if that's where you want to be on Long Island, apparently.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, well, I'm really glad that you were safe and you had a good time of
Yeah.
refreshment and everything. And then we did the nines while you were gone. Can't
How'd it
believe you
go?
took a vacation over the nines, but it was good. We did it from Manchester in the UK, which was a great trip. I didn't do real well with the time lapse or time change, just because I couldn't get some sleep the first couple nights. But no, it went really well. We had a great crowd that watched it, great feedback on it, and I think this is kind of letting a little rabbit out of the hat, but I think we're going to do a rebroadcast of it here in a couple weeks. We're planning on it, so if anybody missed it, they can come back and watch it
Very
in a
cool.
couple weeks. I don't have the firm dates on that yet, but we'll get that
Yeah.
figured out.
So besides me, because I mean I know that's the obvious answer. Who was your favorite speaker?
Oh, I can't answer that. You are trying to get me in trouble, and I'm not going to go there.
I'm good at that. Well, you can just
I'm
say
not,
it was me. I know it was.
you could ask me. You asked me who my least favorite speaker was, and I wouldn't answer that one either.
Oh, bummer. So
But I guess there was something else that happened too during our hiatus, which was the U.S. election. And you live in New York,
woo-hoo.
so your vote really didn't count. Um, I live in Ohio, and my vote really didn't count either. It turns out. But, the most amazing thing to me, regardless of who you were voting for or anything, but when it's all said and done, the most amazing thing to me is we still have the same president, we still have the same Senate, we still have the same control in the House of Representatives, but everybody's out $2 billion.
Oh yeah.
Isn't that incredible?
Oh, that's nuts. I
That's
mean,
incredible. That $2 billion when we're in the same place we were 2 weeks ago.
And here's just something that I'm just going to put out there, and you do with it as you please. But you spend $2 billion on an office that you get what $200,000 a year for.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense, doesn't it?
That probably says a lot about the shape that our country's in. Just gonna leave that there for you.
Yeah. Oh my goodness! But some of the reaction to the election, particularly from the churchy people, or let's say the evangelical, or even the evangelical right, has been. I mean, you would think that this is literally the end of the world, or at least the end of America as we know it.
Well,
what do you think of that? Do you think that's a little overblown, or you think that's blowing the right trumpet there?
I'm still waiting to hear Pat Robertson weigh in on all this, but to see if actually.
I called Pat Robertson out on my blog this week, and I've yet to hear anything from him. The thing is, at the first of the year, he said that God told him who was going to win the election, but then he said God told him not to tell anybody. It's like, Pat, you could have told us.
You could have saved people $2 billion.
Little heads up there, guy.
Yeah, I mean that's $2 billion that could have gone to I don't know, paying down the deficit or something. Who knows?
Yeah, something, or bringing some power to Long Island.
Yeah, bringing power to Long Island. Yeah, people are getting a little testy about that up here.
That's all.
Do I think it's the end of the world? No. I like what I'm seeing some people say. There's the guys that are let's go and do the doomsday prepper deal and start stocking up our root cellars and all that kind of stuff. But some of the guys, I think Ed Stetzer was talking about, hey, we need to get comfortable with the idea that maybe this whole culture war thing has been lost, and we need to start figuring out different ways to do politics in church well. Yeah. Hearing some of those conversations has been, I don't know, for me, kind of refreshing.
Yeah. Encouraging. Ed Stetzer is always, Ed, I know you're watching, Ed Stetzer is always the voice of reason.
Yes. Yeah, so if we can get an autographed book or something, that'd be great. Yeah, I really appreciate his take on that, but I think there's a lot of people that are just kind of like, it just is. It's not.
Yeah. Franklin Graham, I think, is one that kind of came out a little strong. Which America's on the path to destruction, all that kind of thing. The pastor at First Baptist Dallas, Dr. Jeffress, came out and said I believe it was maybe it was before the election, right before that Obama was taking us down the path of the Antichrist. I mean, those things just don't help at all. But the part of me says that this was a really important election, obviously, but at the same point, every election is really important, particularly when you're living through it. So I'm trying to decide, exactly where I start. I think we'll be okay. And the thing is, Matt, God allows. This is no surprise to God. So God knows who our president is and who our president was going to be. So everything's in control, and we just have to do our best to mitigate and migrate through that. Some people will disagree with that, but.
Yeah, absolutely. And honestly, I lived in Baltimore for a while, and I'm convinced that that's probably about the most political city on the face of the planet. So if there was truly a political solution to the issues that we're dealing with as a nation, Baltimore would have had it figured out. But to be honest with you, the city's a wreck, and most of it has to do with the political garbage that goes on. So the issues in this country, I don't know, can be solved by the political process. So, and I think the sooner we get comfortable with that, I think the sooner we're able to really start enacting change. So.
Yeah, and I think there'll be a lot of people, particularly in the church community, in the Christian community, and the church leadership community, they're going to be reassessing exactly what that looks like and how not just keep spinning our wheels.
And that's a great thing.
That's a good thing. That's a good thing.
That's a great thing, and I think some of the cool stuff that happened this election, and I think it's cool just from watching as a society and seeing kind of the way that this nation is changing. not specifically from the Christian context, but I was looking at an article on the CNN religion blog that talks about how we had the first Hindu in the House and the first Buddhist in the Senate, and there's a smattering of atheists, of course, that are kind of all throughout, and the fact that there's we had a Mormon major party candidate, I think is just fascinating, and throughout it all, here's the evangelical Christian church that's losing influence as these other groups are gaining influence. And a lot of the, we've talked before about the rise of the nuns and how many of those are kind of jumping on the Obama bandwagon and that kind of thing. I think there's something fascinating about watching this demographic shift in the country and taking the opportunity just to kind of step back and say, okay, is what we've been doing over the last 40 years, 50 years, longer? Is it effective? It's gotten us to this point. Do we need to change course?
Well, and I think that's take that out of the church world. I mean, I think that's what the Republican Party is going to have to figure out too. Yeah. Is that I didn't hear anything about demographics before the election, and then after the election, you hear all about how the changing demographics have just totally changed the election, and how the Republicans just didn't get it. I think there's truth in that, and I think there's truth in that from the church as well. And that's where I think when you go back to what Dr. Jeffers from First Baptist Dallas had. I think it hasn't sunk into him. Of course, he's in a little bit of a microcosm there in a large, very conservative church where he's probably speaking to his base there, if you want to use a political term. But you get outside the walls of that church, and brother, the culture's changed, and what would fly even in rhetoric 25 or 30 years ago, just to a lot of people sounds like foolishness now. So
yeah,
I don't know.
It makes you wonder. I think you're onto something when you say he's talking to his base, but it makes you wonder. Okay, so if we're supposed to be doing outreach, if we're supposed to be impacting the world with the gospel, do we need to get away from talking to our bases? Maybe do we have what kind of language do we need to start using? There's a lot of talk about how. I don't know if you saw some of this, the talk about how important the racial vote in the church, how the white church people vote is drying up, and I get uncomfortable with that. But it makes you wonder, how are we as a church handling the change of racial demographics throughout the country and bringing people together? And, I don't know.
Yeah. It's going to be an interesting 4 years, both politically and for the church.
Oh yeah,
because these things interconnect and intersect in so many different ways that it's really kind of interesting. But
yeah.
Oh well, let's get on to some of our stuff here. I just wanted to give a shout out to Billy Graham. Billy, I know you're watching. Like that would ever happen. But Billy Graham turned 94 years old this week, and congrats out to Billy Graham. That was interesting. They asked Billy what he wanted for his 94th birthday for lunch, and did you hear what he wanted? It was kind of fun. Hot dogs and apple pie.
Hot dogs and apple pie.
Hot dogs and apple pie.
You don't get much more American than that.
No, you don't.
Drive his Chevy down to get it.
So happy birthday to Billy Graham. The cool thing I thought when I read the article, and it'll be in the program notes here, but was that Billy Graham's quote was, "I never expected to live this long," and he said, "God must have a purpose in my life for me to still be alive." And the guy still, he had a book come out, I think this year or last year. He's got another book coming out later this year on his 40-plus years in ministry, which is, I would think, just got to be chock full of some really interesting and practical advice. So I'm with Billy. I thought, how cool is it that Billy Graham at 94 is still trying to figure out, knows that God has a purpose for him, still trying to figure it out, wants to be faithful to that. That's awesome.
That's pretty cool. That's pretty cool. It's I guess he's never really technically retired, has he?
No, I don't think so. I don't think so. But he just hats off to Billy Graham.
Yeah.
Good for you. Good for you.
Yeah. There you go. Hope I can be that active when I'm 94.
Yeah, I was thinking today, what would I ask for? What do I think I'd want when I was 94 for my lunch? I'm doubting it would be hot dogs.
Applesauce.
Yes, some Jello.
A little bit of Jello.
Give me the raspberry Jello, please.
Can I have the chocolate and shore today?
Nice.
Yeah.
By the time we're 94, they'll probably have all different kinds, all different flavors of Ensure.
Ooh, not just chocolate and vanilla.
Not just chocolate and vanilla.
We can hope.
Smorgasbord. I'm gonna get some chocolate Ensure and some peanut butter Ensure.
Yeah.
I'm gonna pour it together.
Ooh.
Give me a little Ensure cocktail.
That's the Baptists might not like that, but
Yes, exactly. Well, speaking of Baptists,
yes.
Does your church have a winer's room? How was that for a segue?
No, we alienated everybody.
I grew up Baptist, and I still consider I've been Baptist, been in the Baptist church for years, but I still consider myself Baptist. So that was a
in love.
Myself. No.
It was said in love.
Seth Godin had a great article this week about most organizations, whether it's a church, he doesn't even mention churches. His example actually is a school teachers lounge. He said, but just about every organization or business, and I insert church there, has a winer's room where people just kind of go and groan and moan and complain. And I think that happens all the time at churches. It happens in Sunday school classes. It happens in the lobby. But it also happens in the church office and in the church boardroom. And the interesting thing that I thought that my takeaway from Seth's blog, and again the link will be on there, was that when you find yourself in that room, in that winer's room, wherever it is, that you're not doing your best.
Yeah.
You're not at your best if you're complaining. Turn those negative ions into the positive, and do something about it rather than just whining. Whining doesn't usually get you anywhere. So I thought it was good. Seth has a great way in his blog, if you guys haven't read it, to very succinctly in 2 or 3 or 4 paragraphs give you something to think about. And that made me think this week.
Yeah, that was pretty phenomenal. And we've all been in those places. It's just destructive for everything. Did you hear about the IRS not auditing churches?
I did see that. I just read the headline. I didn't get to read the whole article, but that was interesting. What's happening there?
It's fascinating. In on the heels of all the Pulpit Freedom Sunday and all that kind of nonsense that's been going on, the IRS actually came clean and said, we haven't really audited churches for the whole political thing in several years. And the reason is because they didn't have somebody that could make the call on who to audit or not. So they had gone and they had changed their hierarchy and their structure and all that kind of stuff to the point where, they did away with the position that was supposed to be auditing churches, and they never really went to put somebody in place to be able to do that again, which is kind of shocking on many levels.
So there was just one person in the whole IRS that was in charge of.
It was like 6. There were commissioner level people, and then I think it was in the late 90s, early 2000s, they went and changed their structure so that they limited the amount of people that were in that position, and then they gave them jobs that didn't include this, and so basically anybody that got from 1996 until when they suspended this, any churches that got audited by the IRS. Were done so illegally, and so there's a court case, and they ended up suspending it. So they're looking to figure out how to properly do this within the law. So you're probably safe for another 6 months, if you're politically inclined, but I don't know that that's going to go on forever.
Yeah, so it's a free ride for right now.
For right now, but there's a move afoot to even chop some of that, to really crack down hard on that kind of stuff. But I thought that was fascinating.
Yeah. Word out to Dr. Jeffress. You've got 6 more months.
Yeah, you got 6 months, so get it in.
I think that we probably will do that.
Yeah.
Well, let's take another thing that I wrote about this week that I thought was interesting. I'm trying to find it here, but I pretty much entitled the post "Stop Pastoring Like You're Afraid You're Going to Be Fired."
Oh man.
And you've got some pastors that are very, very, very bold, maybe too bold in some things they say, but there's a lot of just kind of pastors that are really not leading because I think they're afraid they're going to be fired at some point. And there was a study that came out, and again the link's there, but this Dr. Frederick Newman says that a lot of times people know very well that they're not in danger of being fired, but they feel stress on the job anyway. And I thought, man, that's a great description of a lot of pastors that I've seen over the years. And he says that there's 2 major mistakes that people make that cause them to act this way. Number one is you're afraid of making a mistake, and I've seen number 2 is kind of a corollary to that. It says the fear of being criticized or yelled at. And I think a lot of pastors, don't you think, Matt, fit into that description of, man, if I stepped out and I led and I tried to do what I really think needs to be done for my church, I'm afraid I'm going to make a mistake, or I'm afraid I'm going to be criticized or yelled at.
Oh yeah. Well, and I think there's a little bit more to it. I mean, one of the weird dynamics of being a professional pastor, is you're called to lead a group of people who also have the ability to fire you if they don't like where you're leading.
Yeah.
And, with that, your family stability and all that kind of stuff is riding on, in many ways, people pleasing, which we're not supposed to be doing. It's kind of a weird dynamic.
Yeah, it really is, and it makes a lot of pastors just feel very trapped because they don't feel like they can do what they need to do, because if they do what they feel like needs to be done for the church, they're going to be ridiculed or criticized, or even in some cases yelled at. But the underlying fear is, if I screw this thing up, I'm not going to have a job and I won't be able to provide for my family.
Yeah.
And I guess it's true for a lot of jobs. I guess if you goof up, you might get fired. But
it's not. In part of being a pastor is making people uncomfortable. In order to do our jobs well, we need to be making people uncomfortable.
Yeah, but it's a fine line between making people uncomfortable and making people too uncomfortable.
Yeah, I'd say I have 4 different types of conversations with pastors. Just in my consulting work that I'm doing. There's the, hey, that's really cool. That kind of conversation when something cool's going on. It's the yeah, that kind of that sucks. We need to figure out how to help you get that figured out. And then there's the you just need to get out of there job. And when I come across the guys that are so I had a conversation with a pastor one time who said, I can't do this because I have my mortgage payment's too high for me to make that. I mean, this is actually what he said.
Yeah.
And
it's probably true.
It's probably true, but I mean, he's like, I feel like I should not be here. I need to be elsewhere. I need to be doing something else. I felt like I was called away from this church years ago, but my mortgage payment's too high. And it's just like, man, there's a lot of guys that are in that situation that we just, as the church, need to give them the freedom to do what they need to do. And for some other guys, we just need to step up and say, look, this is what God's called me to do. This is where we're going.
Yeah. Yeah. And boy, I mean, what kind of advice do you give a person in that? I mean, my first advice would be, get out of there.
Yeah.
You've got to get out.
Yeah.
And the second advice would be to the church is let the guy lead.
Yeah.
That's what you hired him to do, and that's what my post said. Is pastors, if you're not leading, the church hired you to lead, and I understand it's my personality. My personality when it comes to the church, and I'm an elder in my church, and it drives people nuts sometimes. But my philosophy is let's go for it. time is short, hell is hot.
Hmm.
If we make a mistake, we make a mistake. We'll double back and try something different. But let's go for it, man. There's so much at stake that we can't spend time sitting around twiddling our thumbs or worrying about who's going to do what. Let's just get her done.
Yeah.
So don't get me going, man.
Well, yeah, you and I are kind of in the same boat because I'm convinced that I'm going to die too soon to be concerned about stepping on people's toes, which doesn't always necessarily work in my favor. But I'm with you, man.
Yeah,
we're called to lead. We got to lead, so we got a job to do.
So. Well, there's another leader. This is another segue here that I thought was interesting. I don't know if anybody really cares. I just find it really intriguing and interesting. It's the whole thing going on down at the Crystal Cathedral out in California. I can't take all day to fill you in on everything, but most people are up to it a little bit. But last week started the trial between some of the Schuler family and Crystal Cathedral Ministries. Essentially, what's at stake here, Matt, is that when Robert Schuler left, I think back in 2005, the church had made an agreement with him that they were going to make, I think, almost, well, it was $119,000 for his housing allowance. Another $20,065 for insurance, and $198,000 a year to the Schuler's Corporation, which is essentially salary. So,
I'm in the wrong stream.
Yeah, a little over $300,000 for life. They were going to pay him when he retired at 2005. Okay, so they made those payments and they stuck with it until around, I think it said 2008, when everything really started to go south. They had to file for bankruptcy and they stopped payments. So Robert and Arvella have, from my understanding, not really received anything from the church since 2008 or so, and they're suing Crystal Cathedral Ministries, which is, I think, actually legally separate from the church, but for $5 million for the agreement that was breached, and then also they say that the ministry used his copyrighted information, his copyrighted works, and have not reimbursed him for that. So and here's, you've got Robert Schuler, who's what, 80, 83, 84, something like that, and according to even some of his family members, is starting to have some dementia issues, and that's actually showed up on the stand a little bit. And Arvella's the same. She's not real healthy, I don't believe. But it's just horrible to see these two paraded out, and Arvella said, everything that we did for the hour of power, that belongs to us. To which I don't know what the value of that is. I mean, is there really any financial value to all those archives? I don't know. I would think there would be to some of his books and some of his writings. I'm sure there's some ongoing royalties there that I would assume that he's still getting. I would think that would be going to him rather than to the ministry if it was copyrighted under him. But it's sad.
Oh, the whole thing's sad. And as I'm following this, there's three things that come to mind. I read that story. First of all, it says, it was a gentleman's agreement. It was a handshake. It's not in writing.
Yep.
Okay. Let me be clear. Get it in writing.
Yes, you always have to have it in writing. Always. And even when it's in writing, you're going to contest it.
Oh yeah. Yeah. The church is notorious for doing things like the handshake deals. Get it in writing.
Yep.
Second thing is that pastors forget, your sermons, they're not your property. Mm-hmm. They are, unless you have it negotiated in writing.
Yep.
Those sermons are work product that belongs to the church.
Absolutely. Unless you have an agreement that says otherwise, the church is paying you to write those messages and to deliver those messages, and that legally, I believe, unless you have a different agreement, belongs to the church.
Yeah.
They're paying for it.
And you need to get that agreement done before you start working for the church.
Yep.
Because
absolutely.
book deals, all that kind of stuff based on sermons and all that kind of stuff, unless you have that ironed out, that all goes that revenue goes to the church.
Mm-hmm.
You know.
Yep.
So third thing is this, and this ties back to some of the stuff you're talking about at the Nines. You know, they did not do transition well.
Nope.
You know, and this is, you know, every single one of us is going to get old. Well, many of us are going to get old. We're all going to die. And unless we figure out what our transition plan is in advance and start putting it in place, you know, this is the garbage that happens. You know, lawsuits and bankruptcies and, you know, constant turnover and churn on the replacement guy and all that kind of stuff. It's nuts, you know. And I saw, you know, many of you heard that Disney went and bought DreamWorks, and you know, from George Lucas, and you know, I mean, big time deal. What was it, like $4 billion?
Yeah.
So they probably could have financed 2 elections. But they, you know, I saw a video that I'll throw in the show notes that it's George Lucas talking like, you know what, Star Wars is bigger than me. This company is bigger than me, and I am still healthy. I'm still in great shape, you know, but I'm getting old. And if this company and if this stuff is gonna continue after me, I need to hand it off now, and I need to put it into the an organization that's going to care for it well, and you know, that kind of stuff, and that's huge.
Yeah. And you know, with the Schulers, they actually did try to do that. When they brought the son in a few years ago, and again, I don't know, maybe I'm talking out of someplace I shouldn't be talking to, but you know, when they brought him in, yeah, exactly. Thank you. When they brought him in, he actually did make changes. He saw the writing on the wall as far as donations and everything that had been done, and started to make some changes that I think probably would have actually, in the long term, made the Crystal Cathedral more viable.
Yeah.
Even in some of the theological things, he was changing some things, you know, here and there. And you know what? It appears that Dad and the board got upset, and you know, kind of goes back to that last story we had, but they just wouldn't have anything to do with it. So now, all of that said, do I feel for the Schulers that, look, they retired in 2005, they had this agreement, they thought they were all taken care of, and then something bad happened, and all of a sudden they're totally cut off. Do I feel bad for that? Yeah, I feel bad for that. I feel bad for anybody that makes an agreement and doesn't get it followed through on. But at the same time, I hate what this is doing to the Schulers. I hate what this is doing to the church. I hate what this does to the church overall as people see this in the headlines. It's a huge thing out in Southern California, Orange County, making big headlines. You know, whenever a pastor sues his church or his ministry for $5 million, there is going to be
badness.
Bad backlash in the media and what people think.
Yeah.
So, and it just confirms what a lot of people think about Christianity, unfortunately. I hate that.
Yeah, that does.
So let's move on. You had 2 things that I thought that we could wrap this thing up with today that I thought were kind of interesting. The one was the Hollywood movie thing and the rhinestone jeans thing. Tell us a little bit about that. It's hilarious.
Well, yeah, and this goes back to even the what we were just talking about, that thing that my mouth's not working, but you may have noticed, Todd, that culture, society is changing, and apparently, you know, just maybe, rhinestone jeans are becoming a pretty significant part of the culture in Sioux City, Iowa?
Yeah. Sioux City, Iowa, of all places. The church having problems with, I guess, women wearing the bedazzled jeans and the rhinestone jeans. They're what, marking up the pews and ripping the fabric?
They're marking up the pews. They're destroying chairs. It's a bad thing, you know. And the picture or the article I came across it on Patheos. If you look at it, you know, it appears that it's okay to not be wearing a shirt as long as you're not wearing the rhinestone jeans.
I saw that.
And just for the record,
of pictures.
Totally safe for work picture. Just saying. Yeah, but so there's a Catholic church out there. It's Conception Catholic Church in Mobile, Iowa, is asking people to not wear rhinestone jeans because they're destroying the pews.
Yeah, I think it's interesting. I think how this happened is they actually put a little blurb in their bulletin about please don't wear your rhinestone jeans. They're hacking up the pews. And I think they must have had a reporter at Mass that week or something because they went and wrote a story on it, which is how we got it. But interesting stuff. I don't know. Rhinestone jeans, perhaps I just haven't noticed, but they haven't hit Ohio that much yet. So we're in good shape here.
You don't have any.
No.
Oh, that's a shame. Now, interesting corollary to this is, this is in that article. Apparently, there's other churches that are using couches, and hipsters are having trouble getting out of the couches in their skinny jeans. So, I think the only solution is either no jeans or just outlaw pants altogether in church, and I think we're fine, right?
Well, I mean, that's what going into this next story that you had about this other church that actually wouldn't have been a problem there, right? Mm-hmm. It's not the men that are wearing the bedazzled jeans; it's the women, hopefully. Yes. But at this church, and I think you're going to put a link to it on the program notes, but this church it wouldn't be a problem unless they're bedazzling their jean skirts.
Yeah. This was from 1982. A qualification in order to be able to volunteer and serve as a leader at this church. You're not allowed to go to the movies.
That's a given.
Women can't wear pants or rhinestone jeans or skinny jeans or anything. So and what I thought was weird and interesting and all that kind of stuff is it asks you to support the pastor and program of the church with 100% loyalty and total cooperation. So I'm assuming there's no winer's room. There's no winer's room there.
Oh, believe me, I grew up in that type of church. There is a winer's room. There's actually a very large winer's room.
But the letter says it's not allowed to be there. You're supposed to support the pastor.
Well, the winer's room is very discreet.
Oh.
Because if you get caught in the winer's room, it's not a good thing.
No. So do they wear the rhinestone jeans in the winer's room?
No rhinestone jeans.
Okay.
No. The problem isn't with the rhinestone jeans. It's more with I grew up in a church that was it was Fundamentalist Baptist church, but it was a great church. It was a great church up until I got to college, and then we got a pastor in that was from Hyles-Anderson, and was very, very legalistic. So most of the conversations there were about hair length. I mean, seriously, if your hair touched your ears or touched your collar, that was a big thing. And this is, I mean, I lasted about 2 months of this. I'm telling you.
Wait.
We had.
Are you admitting to having a mullet in your college years?
No. No, I didn't have a mullet, but. I should share some of my high school pictures sometimes. That would be fun. But I didn't have my hair cut short until I went to college because I had to, which is another story. But we actually had somebody going around. I remember this, and it seems so ludicrous. It's still ludicrous. It was ludicrous then, but 30 years later, it's even worse. We had somebody going around peeking through people's windows because they heard that somebody was playing cards.
No way.
They went to confirm whether or not they were playing cards, and by golly, they were playing cards. It was.
How do you get that job?
I don't know.
That's a job right there. Speaking of jobs to have, there was one thing, and I'm just extending this thing. You had something on your blog about just probably one of the most intriguing jobs that I think I've ever heard of. You want to share a little bit about that? It had something to do with Virginia, didn't it?
Yeah, you'll have to look up the link and put it on the program notes. But no, I just wrote a post yesterday actually called "Lifeway versus Vaginas," which will probably, like I said, cut me some slack. I mean, it's hard enough to write a title with those two words in it in such close proximity. But the whole Rachel Held Evans book coming out on the year of political womanhood, she made kind of a big stink in her blog that she had used the word vagina not in a rude way, I guess, just had the word vagina in her manuscript, and Thomas Nelson, her publisher, asked her to take that word out because if she had that word in there, that Lifeway probably would not carry the book in their stores. So some of the bloggers got a hold of it, and Lifeway eventually came out and said, no, we're not going to carry her book. And initially, I guess, at least didn't really give a reason, so all the bloggers got together, and not me, but started calling this thing Vagina Gate and all kinds of other words. But our good friends at Christianity Today tried to set this whole thing straight as to whether or not vagina was really the reason that Lifeway didn't carry the book. So they published a post this past week, which I just thought was that's where you get
special.
Into whose job is this. They went through and they looked at the books that Lifeway carries and looked at some books and found the word vagina in like about 20 books. But they actually went through and said how many times that word was used in each book. Like there's one book that had 72 uses of the word vagina. And my question is, who does that? Who goes and looks through the thousands of books that they carry, and finds out which books actually have the word vagina? That's a big enough job in and of itself. But who combed all those books and found that there's 72 references to that word in that book? And all those other 20 books. I guess you can, with Amazon and all that kind of stuff, you can go through and search the text, but I'm like...
I'm just trying to figure out, how do you have that conversation with your accountability partner? What do you do? What did you do today? Yeah. Go ahead and explain that.
Exactly. Yeah, that would probably, or your wife for that matter.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
That would.
That's just bad. I will say, Christianity Today, they didn't do this until after we talked about it on the filter last time.
Yeah, I think that's probably why.
Yeah, I think we're on the cutting edge of whatever it is that we do, and Christianity Today is starting to pay attention.
Well, here's my question moving forward: is now that that list has been published, who's going to make the first resolution for the next Southern Baptist Convention that will outlaw all of those books that have the word vagina in it? Because there's going to have to be a push from some people that are. I mean, the one. Like I said, the one was from 1998. It was Tim and Beverly LaHaye. You remember that book, The Act of Marriage?
No.
And I said, you don't remember that book?
No, sorry.
You need to pick up a copy of that book. I'm just telling you. I read part of this book like when I was in college because somebody showed it to me and said, "Can you believe this is a Christian book?" And it will drop your jaw. I mean, it will literally drop your jaw. And it's like Tim and Beverly LaHaye. It's like, but
oh man, I'm glad I wasn't taking anything.
Sorry, but they used language back in 1998, 1999 that would make Mark Driscoll blush. It's absolutely incredible. So for there to be 13 years later, this controversy over whether this gal used the word, which I'm told she didn't take it out, it's in the book, but it's not in a vulgar or even necessarily a real sexual sense that she used the word. But it's interesting that 13 years later we're having this conversation. And I guess Lifeway did come out later. Somebody commented on the blog and said that the reason that they're not covering the book isn't because of the word at all. It's because they carried her first book and sold like one copy of it per store. So they said it was just an economic decision, which again makes some sense. But
so is this whole thing just a sales marketing deal? You think?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
I think from the author's standpoint, I feel bad that I haven't read the book. I don't know that much about Rachel Held Evans, but I feel bad for her that she's written this book and it's not being covered in a major Christian retailer. But at the same time, she's the one that drew attention to it, and it got her on The View and it got her on the Today Show.
Yeah, I wonder how many books it sold.
Yeah, well, I understand Lifeway is selling it online. They're just not selling it in their stores.
Yeah.
So, and I don't even know what the decision is to how you make a decision to do one or the other or both.
Yeah.
But I imagine if you put it online, it's not a great economic. When you're an outfit as big as Lifeway, you probably do have to be very careful of what you stock because each
every June you have a motion about what you can and can't sell.
Well, like I said, I would be very surprised if after this Christianity Today list, there's not going to be some motions on what not to sell. And Lifeway's going to be under some pressure.
That's the best part of that whole meeting, in a watching train wreck type of way. So.
You're a horrible, horrible man.
I probably am.
and with that, we should probably wrap it up.
Yes, absolutely. So, well, Todd, it's been great, even though we did this a day late. I actually have to go out and get into a gas line. So probably in the next 6 hours, we'll have a full tank of gas after I burn a whole tank of gas just to fill it up. What are you up to this week?
I could get you some. There's no lines here. I could just get you like a 5-gallon thing and FedEx it to you.
That'd be great, man. That would be great, actually.
Is it legal to FedEx gasoline?
Yeah. What's legal? What's legal between friends? You know.
That's true. That's true.
Yeah.
No, what have I got going? I just started blogging again last week, and it was fun. With the 9s, I had not enough time even to get some of my 9 stuff done some weeks leading up to it. So it was really nice to have a break from the blog, and I'm back blogging, and it's been a blast. There's a lot of stuff to catch up on. Man, I love the church, Matt. I love all the kind of idiosyncrasies and kind of silly stuff that happens. But I love the people that are out there getting it done.
Yeah.
And so I love to share those leadership type things and vision type things too. So it's just toddrhodes.com. What you got going
on? Well, I am after 2 weeks away and a week of just not being able to blog because of everything that's going on. I'm going to be doing that a little bit too. But I think this week I'm going to be working to get some work teams up to Long Island because for those of you that may or may not know, Long Island got slammed pretty hard by Sandy, especially our South Shore. And so there's some churches that are doing some just fantastic work getting into people's houses and gutting them out and that kind of stuff. They just need more workers.
Yeah.
We've had a great outpouring of supplies and clothes and all that kind of stuff. But one of the things I'm trying to do is find the places to house teams to come up and get showers and that kind of stuff, and then be able to deploy them to where they need to be. And so we're, if you know anybody that wants to send a team, man, we're there.
Okay, sounds good. How can they get a hold of you?
Matt at churchsimple.net is the easiest, or you can, through my blog, churchthought.com.
Excellent. Excellent. Well, church really has an opportunity to step up here. I think particularly because a lot of people are just, it's going on 2 weeks.
Yeah.
Some people don't have power. I heard a report yesterday that they're not even letting some people back into their homes.
Not yet.
And I heard a horrible report about some guy that said he wanted to get back into his home and for his kids to be able to go in and get some of the stuff, and that they were threatening that if they took their kids in there, that there was going to be human services called in. I mean, it's just little stories like that I don't know. That was probably on Fox News, so it might not be true. But the government and FEMA and the Red Cross, they're probably not going to be able to get there. And there's churches on the ground that can make such a difference.
Absolutely.
So
absolutely. There's a great move of people working out here, and Long Island is maybe 3% would identify as Christian, in the evangelical sense of the word, and this is just an opportunity for people to be able to go out and do some cool things. So
be the hands and feet of Jesus.
Go figure. So
great. Well, I hope you have a good week. I look forward to hearing what happens this week.
Yeah, me too. All right, man.
All right.
Next week.
Be there, be square.
Woo-hoo.